Hello, I'm Priya Basil. I've written two novels. The first, entitled Ishq and Mushk, was published in 2007. The second, which I've just completed, is called The Obscure Logic of the Heart. Before I talk more about my writing, I feel compelled to say a bit about reading. I revere the act of reading for many reasons. One of them is because I believe that the reader continues what the writer began. Emerson summed it up well when he said,
"'Tis the good reader who makes a good writer."
reading is also essential to my daily routine in that it lubricates my writing and my thinking. We're regularly exhorted to eat our 5 fruit and veg a day, but for me, a mental 5 a day is just as important. Sartre observed that one cannot write without the intention of succeeding perfectly. I've commenced every book, essay, and article in the grip of this gorgeously impossible aspiration. And impossible it will inevitably remain, because, as Borges said, to try to express oneself and to want to express the whole of life are one and the same thing. As a writer, I realize I'll never manage to convey the entire panoply of life, but as a reader, I know how just one idea expressed well can feel like a summation of existence. If I had to isolate one idea which is a preoccupation in my work, it would be the theme of tension between the private and the public.
This, in very different ways, is at the heart of my first 2 novels.
I'm attracted by what I call the gaps and overlaps in every life, like the puzzling gap between what people are and what they pretend to be, or what is left unsaid in a relationship rather than what is spoken.
Let me confess to an almost compulsive curiosity about people. I once followed a man because of the way he answered a phone call.
Susie? What's going on? You don't answer my calls or my emails. Even your mother... What? You're not having second thoughts about the wedding, are you?
I trailed him onto a train platform, almost boarding his train, which was headed in the opposite direction to where I was going, in the hope of getting more insight into this private drama.
More broadly, I'm fascinated by the points at which political, social, and natural forces buffet individual lives and loyalties. Which of these arenas, the public or the private, most defines an individual? Sometimes, as we know, people don't even have a choice. Their lives are ravaged from the outside by war or a natural disaster. But I'm interested in the points at which internal and external forces work on someone at the same time, forcing the heart into conflict with itself. In my first novel, which begins during the partition of India in 1947, the main character Karam is caught up in the partition violence. He ends up in a refugee camp where he catches typhoid and falls unconscious. He only fully recovers once the worst of the troubles are over, and then he can't recall what befell him. He's haunted by the sense of being caught in the thick of history and yet remaining simultaneously oblivious to it. He spends the rest of his life trying to overcome a sense of anticlimax. He travels the world trying to catch history in the making, as he puts it, but he always manages to miss the moment. It is his fate to remain out of step with history. History, schmistry, his wife Sarna mutters, suspecting him of running around the globe to have affairs with other women. She's also had a bad experience and copes by retreating into herself. Where Karam seeks to place himself in a larger narrative, Sarna privileges her private traumas and tries to impose these on the wider reality. In my second novel, The Obscure Logic of the Heart, the public-private conflict is examined more deeply through the fate of one character, Lina Merali, who hails from a pious Muslim family in the suburbs of Birmingham. She falls in love with Anil Mayur, a wealthy Kenyan Sikh architect who is governed by his aesthetic preferences. The clash of their different faiths hangs over the lovers, but the dilemma becomes ever more complex as Lina's work for the UN exposes her to the corruption in Kenya, where the Mayurs have close links to the ruling party. It emerges that the Kenyan government is complicit in smuggling arms to neighbouring Sudan, causing the very problems Lina is working to alleviate. As the stakes escalate, she must decide where her loyalties lie. Is it the case, as she thinks at one point, that the world, finally, is what lies closest to your heart? Or, the novel asks, are there greater considerations which must eclipse all other allegiances? No one story can cover all the permutations of that question, let alone the answer, which is why I suspect that this theme will remain a preoccupation for me. I'm curious to see whether I'll become one of those authors who has a core obsession around which every work is created, like J.M. Coetzee with his delineations of the outsider and his suspicions about the reliability of narrative. Or might I be someone like Harry Kunzru, whose 3 works so far have been very different from each other? Whichever way I veer, I know that each attempt will be driven by the desire to capture a truth which might have the power to change something in the world. This might sound like a kind of hubris, so I hasten to add that I don't have the truth. With each act of writing, I embark on a journey to find it. I love the notion that writers can be taught by the books they write. Your writing self is your better self, because while writing, you have the luxury, never otherwise granted, to think and rethink, and revise and revise and revise. Thank you for listening. Sharing my thoughts with you like this has reminded me of Jules Renard's comment that writing is the only way of talking without being interrupted.